Nice to see everyone. Amazing. Yeah, we have had Nyla drop out, sadly. She's a tour manager, but the show must go on. And we've got the lovely Marla and Gareth, so we will be having a lovely conversation today. I'm just going to do next on my slides. Yeah, so I'm just going to do a few access things just before we start. I'm Phoebe from Youth Music. I've got fair skin, brown hair, and I'm in my office room. There's sort of like a green background, but I've got my blur on. So just some access stuff for these exchange sessions. We'll let you know the agenda. It's going to be quite a casual session today. We'll have a Q&A at the end, and we'll describe ourselves and describe any slides, but actually we're not going to have slides apart from what I'm sharing now today. We're just going to have our faces, and closed captions have been enabled, and we want to ensure that everyone gets the chance to speak. So obviously we've got the Q&A, and if any questions come up today, just do put them in the chat, and I'm sure like Marla and Gareth were happy to also be interrupted if something burning's come up for someone. That would be fine as well. And yeah, there's no slides or notes, so I won't be circulating any of them. But yeah, if everyone could say hi in the chat, that would be great. And if you could display your name and organisation, pronouns if you're happy to, that would be lovely. And when you do the Q&A, just giving your name before you speak. And this goes without saying, but I'm saying it anyway, but being active and respectful listeners, considering different viewpoints, experiences and communication needs. And while we are speaking, if everyone could remain muted, that would be amazing. And these calls are casual. You can move around, cameras on or off, and take breaks as and when needed. We don't have any breaks scheduled. I think that's most of what I wanted to say. If you've got any technical difficulties, do let me know. So I'm going to stop sharing now. And I'm going to take you to Gareth to introduce yourself. So hi, Gareth.
Hiya. My name's Gareth. My pronouns are he, him. I have fair, freckled skin and mousy brown hair with a sort of wavy fringe. I'm wearing a faded black overshirt and I'm in a green room with some framed art behind me. And I'm on this panel, I guess, because I'm a musician, but also because I manage the band that I'm in. My band is called Los Campesinos. We're like a sort of indie rock band. And last Friday actually was 20 years since our first ever gig. Since then, we've had a really great career. We've released 7 studio albums and we've played shows and festivals across 5 continents. For the past 10 years, I've also managed the band, and our most recent album, All Hell, was released on our very own record label, which I also run, called Heartswells.
Thanks so much. And we've got Marla as well.
Hiya, I'm Marla Kether. I have dark skin, black hair styled in Bantu knots. I'm wearing a beige jumper and I'm sat in my kitchen with a framed picture of myself and an artist I used to play with behind me. So yeah, I'm here as an artist and a producer. So I started out as a session musician in 2018, playing with various different artists over the years, and currently playing bass guitar for Little Sims. And as of 2022, I am a solo artist as well. I started producing in lockdown, and I've since kind of I've been my own tour manager, I've been my own manager at points. I've done a lot of different roles as a DIY artist. So yeah, I've been very busy, including this week. But yeah, excited to have a chat with some of you and answer any questions.
Yeah, well, first of all, I guess I just want to know, what's a typical day like for you at the moment? Or is there not really a typical day, but what have you both been up to the last month, for example? Yeah.
So over the past month, I've been in touring mode. So I supported Femi Kuti across the UK with my band, which was incredible. And so that was 5 shows: London, Bristol, Manchester, Leeds and Glasgow, where I kind of functioned as my own tour manager because my manager booked a holiday to Turkey before this tour was booked in, so he wasn't there to help me out. And it was a really incredible tour. So I was kind of putting on many different hats. When we'd arrive, I'd sort out the merch and then I'd get the buyouts. So go to the representative for the show and get the money from my band and myself to buy food. Kind of liaising with the people on the grounds, making sure the sound check was ran to time and everything was all good, as well as being the band leader and the bassist. And then at the moment, I'm supporting another band called Witch, who are a really sick Zambian rock band. And that's like a solo tour, as in I'm DJing and playing bass, like doing a hybrid set where I'm just touring on my own. Really kind of easy cities to go to, just going back and forth between London and Bristol. But my days at the moment are finishing off my EP, so going back and forth between my manager and like getting masters and different versions of different tracks and being like, is this the one? Are we good to sign off and like send it off to the label basically? As well as kind of doing some admin bits for the tour, the headline tour. I mean, not the headline tour, sorry, the support tour I'm doing at the moment. So I'm going to Bristol after this meeting, and then kind of coming back and forth between London, because I had like a DJ thing yesterday for Pizza Express, which was kind of something that came in last minute. And then coming back to London for a friend's birthday, and then going back to Bristol to DJ. So like each day is very different for me. But this week in particular is a quite egregious example of that. So it's very, as a freelance, multidisciplinary kind of person, it's really varied, but it's quite exciting. The spice of life variety.
That's so nice to hear about that, all that. And yeah, Gareth, I know that you obviously manage your own band and you probably relate to quite a lot of this, like deciding what opportunities to do and like, yeah, just what's your sort of last month looking like? I know you've got, lots on.
Yeah, totally. A lot of overlap with what Marla said there in terms of we've got shows coming up 2 weeks time. We've got an 8-date UK tour. So lots of advancing of that in terms of liaising with promoters and venues, sorting things as widely as, like tech spec. We're a 7-piece band, so sometimes we go into venues and we're pushing them to their limits a little bit in terms of tech spec and stuff like that. So checking that all that is okay in advance, things like stage times and, we're traveling on a tour bus. So things like organising parking for the bus, ahead of time, getting dispensation from councils and boring stuff like that. So really very much looking forward to being on tour and then going from the organisation to the playing shows, having a drink, having fun with your mates thing. But also in terms of managing the band, as I mentioned, it's just been our 20th anniversary. And so around that, we've, had a new merch launch. We've been generating assets to advertise that on our socials. We have been repressing our first 3 records on vinyl. So things like liaising with pressing plants, approving test pressings, sorting artwork, and even wider scope than that. During this time, we've been getting lots of rights back from earlier records of ours that were previously owned by record labels. So there's loads of legal stuff that I've been doing there in terms of contracts and documents confirming that the rights are returned to us, and then speaking again to different performing rights agencies to make sure that the correct payments are coming through. So it's, my average day, I spend so much time, and maybe a lot of you can empathize with this, just like wanting to action things, but waiting on other people responding before I can do it. So the best days are days where I'll sit down at my computer and just work for, all day straight, and the time will completely go away from me. But then the worst days are when you sit down in the first 45 minutes, you fire off 10 emails, and then you don't get any responses for the rest of the day. So you're just in limbo waiting. I think that's a lot of my experience as being an artist and an artist manager is just waiting for other people to do work so that I can continue with mine.
Yeah, that sounds very relatable. I'm sure that's really relatable to a lot of people. And you're quite known at this point for being quite transparent with your touring income. I don't know if you'd like to just touch on kind of the sort of article you shared recently about, profit on tour, not profit on tour, how that works for you, especially as someone that's got this 20 years like experience, and how it's like lined up for someone at this point.
Yeah, I think I realised I need to carve out a niche for myself in this latent era of my career. So I've gone for the guy that says more than the music industry wants them to say about money. Yeah, we've published a few pieces. We did one sort of this time last year where we just broke down the costs of what it took to do a one-off show in Dublin. At Christmas, we published all of the streaming income that we'd received from streaming platforms over the course of a year. So really attempted to break down and be transparent about that. So, this is exactly what Spotify paid us for X amount of streams. And last week I published a really long article, sorry, apologies, about exactly what it cost us to do a tour of the US. So in 2024, our second most recent US tour, we did an 11-date tour of East Coast, Midwest and West Coast. And we just published exactly what that cost us, exactly what our fees were for those 11 shows, and essentially where the money that we made was spent out, be it on visas, flights, travel, accommodation, accountancy fees, gear hire, all sorts of things like that. For the most part, it's been very well received. There's some music industry people who are a bit rattled because they don't like artists talking about the realities of finances. And then there are some, old punks who think that every artist should suffer on tour and you should sleep on the floor and you should cram 14 people into a 10-seat Sprinter van. But for the most part, I think people like to hear about the intricacies and see behind the curtain, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's quite a British taboo to not talk about money, but I think money is like so important. And obviously at Youth Music it is, because we're literally a funder, like money talks, people need money. Marla, I don't know if you want to talk a bit about the Next Gen Fund and the sort of like when you received, like you had some money for a project.
Sorry, working from home. In 2022, I believe it was, I applied for the Next Gen Fund to fund my debut EP, which was released on Saffron Records in 2023. And so I applied for that funding for the recording costs. It was mainly the recording and marketing costs, because at the time it was like kind of like fresh out of COVID, so I didn't need studio hire per se, but I did need to obviously pay my session musician to a recording remotely. And the marketing, I basically wanted to release the 5-track EP, but as 5 singles, so kind of like getting lots of press attention and like streaming service kind of focus on each song. And yeah, it was like really, really helpful having that funding. And it also meant that I was part of the youth music kind of community after that. So I was eligible to eligible to be nominated for the Youth Music Awards, and then won the Producer Award in 2024, which is amazing. And so, yeah, that funding basically meant I could create my debut project and like have a jumping off point to actually like cement myself as a solo artist, like pivoting from the session work. And since then, it's meant that I can, just develop as a solo artist, which means now I've got another project in the pipeline as well. It was pretty instrumental for my starting up as a solo artist.
That's so nice to hear. And I think we had quite a lot of questions on like how to get out of your bedroom and actually go and play some shows at a smaller level. I don't know if you want to touch on kind of how you started actually playing shows, and like some people might not know like how do I play a show, like, and I don't, just even how much should I be paid to play a show, especially if you're an early artist, and what's bad practice, good practice. I kind of just want to like explore like all of that in terms of like, especially when you're DIY and you're starting out.
So I'd say a good place to start is any festivals that are like apply to play. So like there's the Green Man is apply to play. Glasto is the Great Escape, which is like a showcase one, which is good as a artist starting out, because it's one for industry to attend, so it's very much like there's a lot of eyes on you, hopefully, and there's also like good to meet other artists who are starting out. So for me, when I was in Bristol, I lived there for like 6 years, but I knew a few people who were promoters and stuff, so they would put me onto different shows, it would be like very like informal, like 80 capacity rooms kind of thing, which were like very low pressure and really good to start out, because they were my first time kind of like band leading and doing all the advancing and the tour managing stuff. So like making a tech spec for the first time and like making a hospitality rider and all these different things. And so after that, so my headline tour, for example, last year, which was the London one was at the Shacklewell Arms, which is a 200 capacity room. And so for that one, it was basically a matter of reaching out to the promoter, which was Colombo Group. And they're a really great promoter. They're normally based at the Jazz Cafe. And that was kind of like, liaising about what I wanted to do for the show, basically, and kind of being realistic about whether 200 capacity was going to be too much or whether it would be realistic to set it out and kind of things like that. And so generally it's, I'd say reaching out to promoters, seeing artists that you admire and appreciate, seeing the promoters that they're working with and reaching out to them, because they have the capacity to go to different venues of different sizes. So if you're an artist starting out, you can go to a smaller venue. If you're more established, you can go to bigger ones. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Gareth, just anything on that thoughts?
I would definitely reiterate what Marla said about promoters being the key. I think sometimes there's a misconception that the best port of call is the venue. Sometimes the venue will also be the promoter, but generally speaking, the venue is the infrastructure that makes the show happen rather than the show happening itself. So I would look at the areas that you want to be playing in and have a look at who puts on shows that you would fit on, and then reach out to those people. I think one of the hand in hand in that, I think, would be who are the artists and the bands that you want to be playing with. Speak to them, make friends, go to shows that you would like to see yourself playing on, and meet people there, talk to people, talk to other opening bands that are getting the opportunities that you would like, and make friends with people, because this sharing of knowledge is vital, I think. And I think especially the way that the music industry is trending, it's bands are going to rely more and more on sort of kindred spirits and people who want to do things in the same way that they're doing them. And I think if you are reaching out to promoters or bands or venues, I think it's really important just to get the information that you are providing to them correct the first time around, because people are busy, and if somebody gets a well-meaning email that doesn't include information about a link to your music or what genre you are or anything like that, I think they're going to be more inclined to just delete the email straight away than to spend time going back to you and saying, oh, please, can you send me your music so I can listen to it? On the other hand, I think if people open up an email that's 500 words long, they're going to think, I've not got time for this. So I think and I'm not saying that's right, but I think that is the reality of seeking out shows as a young or new artist. So I think be clear in what you're trying to communicate and what you think that person is the information you think that person is going to value from you.
Can I piggyback off of that? So when I started out, I would do a lot of looking at artists and bands I'd want to support, and going to the venues or the promoters and being like, oh, I see you have this gig happening in a few months' time. I would love to support if you haven't got anyone booked already. And even if they do have someone booked, at least you're kind of on their radar at that point. And I would just keep doing that, so they kind of have an idea of the types of artists I want to support as well. And so in a city like outside of London, like Bristol, where the community and the networks are quite small, it's I'd say that's a really good way. And in London, I didn't really get my start as a solo artist in London per se. So I just know the city's huge and has loads of promoters and venues. So it could mean that there's actually more of a scope to do something like that as well. But it's just not my experience because I did it in Bristol more so.
And sorry, I thought of one other thing, booking agents, other bands' booking agents. If there's a band coming through that you would like to open for, a lot of bands, I think especially international bands, won't necessarily have a tour support, and will leave things until last minute, and then it will be a week before the show and the promoter will realise, oh shit, we've not got a band to open this gig. And so if you've reached out to the booking agent, you're an easy booking because you've shown an interest. They know you're going to say yes. So there's no harm in reaching out to a booking agent saying, hey, I see you've got whoever coming through Bristol, Cardiff, Manchester, wherever next, in a couple of months' time. If you need a local opener, we're big fans. We'd love to do it. Here is a link to our music. A lot of the time, a booking agent and promoter will just think, oh, great, I don't need to think about this myself anymore. And we'll put you on the bill. And then you've got that great opportunity to play to an audience that you're excited to play to.
Amazing tips. Thanks for that. Gareth, your band's also quite known for making your shows inclusive, like doing lots of no-brainer things. I'd like you to, talk me through that if you could.
We certainly try. I always feel the need to caveat this with, I don't think that new artists should be thinking about these things that we do, because I think you've got enough to consider, and that really the pressures for these changes should be coming from bands who already have a platform. And I think that really these things should be being implemented by promoters and by venues themselves. But just as a sort of like broad idea of the things that we do, we only play independent venues. I'm tired of hearing bands say, support your local independent venue, and then they'll go on tour and they'll just play a load of O2 academies. I think bands need to put their money where their mouth is on that and support the venues that they want to thrive. We only play accessible venues as well. We will only play venues if they will agree to implementing gender neutral bathroom facilities. We 5% of tickets for all our gigs are available at a low income rate. So generally speaking, tickets for our shows, we keep the general ticket price low anyway. It's always sub 25 quid, but 5% of the capacity is available at £8, so that any low income or unemployed fans want to attend, then they're not priced out of that. And we've seen some other great acts that have picked up doing that and have cited us as a prompt to do it. So that's fantastic. And I guess even something like, for the last 15 years, we've not played on an all-male lineup. We always ensure that bands we're playing with have non-male members, because I go to so many gigs where everybody on stage is just a white man, and I know that people in the audience appreciate seeing representation for themselves at a show, and that shows that you are welcome in this space and that you can go on to have this career that you want. So those are things that we do and that are important to us. The other thing is we always publish stage times way in advance. Yesterday published stage times for our shows, which are in 2 weeks' time, because people need to sort transport, they need to sort childcare, and it's not fair to be waiting on the day wondering what time your show's happening. But we are in a privileged position to be able to do these things because we have a 20-year career, and if we say we want to do something, then people listen to us in a way that they wouldn't if we were different people and we're a new band.
Great, thank you so much. So we had quite a lot of questions that were sort of like, how do I get a manager? How do I get a live agent? When do you actually need a team around you? And when is it actually like time to just do the DIY thing for, I suppose, a longer amount of time, like Marla or Gareth, or like any thoughts on those sort of questions where people are like potentially playing 100 cap, or less, and they're thinking they need to take the next step, but maybe like, when do you take that step? When do you need a team?
Do you want to go first, or should I?
You go, Marla. I've just talked loads.
Okay. So for me, it basically got to a point where I felt like I was doing a lot of admin and it was stifling my ability to do a lot of the actual creating and the making of music. So I was doing a lot of the kind of like the advancing for the shows and like finding the shows as well, reaching out to the promoters, doing all this stuff when I actually just wanted to have time to just make new music. So yeah, the debut EP came out in 2023, and I've only just in the past like year, when I actually got a manager, felt like I had the time to really just put all my energy into just listening to more music and finding more influences and really doing that kind of thing. So I got the advice before I got a team that if you're at a point where you feel like you need a manager, you probably need a booking agent first. Because when there's a manager like taking 20% of stuff, you actually want to be getting gigs rather than them taking 20% of like less money, basically. And it also means that when you do have the gigs, when you have a lot of the kind of momentum and stuff, it means that there's someone there and you kind of have a trajectory, and there's like, it's easier to see maybe like a 2-year plan. Sorry, there's people doing work in my house, by the way, if you hear any drilling. But when you're at a point where you're getting lots of bookings and you feel like you kind of have like a short-term and long-term plan, that's a really good time to get a manager on board, because then you have like tangible things where you're like, I want to do X, Y, Z, and I need your help, basically. And then you can also have a trial period with that manager where you can kind of see whether they're like hitting those short-term goals as well, to see if they're the right fit. But in terms of booking agents, for me, it was going to bands and artists that I like, seeing who their booking agents were, and then sending them like videos of me playing live and sending them my social media and my music and things like that, to see if they were a good fit as well. So yeah.
I absolutely agree with what Marla said about if you think you need a manager, you probably need a booking agent first. I am very anti-manager, and I think that the industry needs to change the way that management is handled in order to reflect the current realities of artists. I think that too many managers are taking a lot of money for very little work. And I think when bands or artists enter into a relationship with a manager, and the default would be that the manager takes 20% of everything that you earn, regardless of if it's profit, etc. I think it often flips the dynamic that you then feel like you are working for a manager. And I think an important thing for all artists to remember, and all of these working relationships need to be based in mutual respect, but whoever, booking agent, manager, marketing team, press team, they're all working for you because you're paying them ultimately. And I think sometimes artists lose track of that and think that they have to do what the manager tells them to do, rather than the fact that the manager should be working towards achieving the goals of the artist. So I advocate for a more flexible approach where an artist would perhaps work with a project manager on a specific project with a specific aim, maybe on a retainer basis or a percentage basis, but one that doesn't feel like a relationship that you're entering into and becoming beholden to over the next decade or whatever. I think the times when an artist needs most help is when they're starting out, but I think that can come from sharing knowledge with friends and with peers. And then I think when an artist gets to a certain size, of course, you're not able to take care of all of the day-to-day things that are happening for you. But I think there are a lot of bands, especially of my band size, and bands that are sort of a couple of decades into their careers, that are still operating with a manager because it's all they've ever known and don't need one. I think it's partly an ego thing, because having a manager makes you feel like you're proper. But I think that there are a lot of bands who are throwing away money at the first point, because 20% of everything they're earning is going to a manager who maybe by a certain point isn't actually doing anything that you couldn't do yourself. So I think exactly as Marla said, booking agent would be the first thing if you are looking to be a live act. That's I think especially with a booking agent, it's in their interest to to help grow your audience and grow your opportunities, because generally they'll be taking 10% of your fees, but it feels very different to working with a manager to me. And then it's what knowledge you can share with your peers, with your bandmates, etc., taking on different roles that can help you grow to that next level without necessarily needing to get a full-time manager on board.
Roxandra, you've got a question. Happy for you to come in.
Hi. I don't want to be like the opposition, but I want to play the devil's advocate a little bit on this point. It's only because I've done a year as a music manager. Well, kind of done. But I was part of the Music Managers Forum, and my experience as a manager has been, I think I agree with this idea of the relationship needs to be like not sneaky, and that the manager should really just work towards the artist. I was also managing an artist soon realized that I actually am not made for this really, but I was giving a lot of my own money into that sort of relationship, and paying for the PRS, for example, to set it up for them because they couldn't afford, or covering certain costs. And I think with a manager as well, I think it's important sometimes artists really know how to negotiate more than anything, because I think a manager can be good if they actually do the work that the artist shouldn't really necessarily think about, because they should focus on their music and their craft, and in that sense. But it's true, it's the idea of the relationship being like clear and transparent, and not feeling like anyone's taking advantage of anyone really. My partner, he's an artist, and he always just, when we are out and about, he's just like, oh, talk to my manager. And I'm like, okay, doing all the admin and scheduling of things for him, which is also great for him, because then he doesn't actually have the capacity or skill set to think about certain organizational things. But I do agree it has to be like a good relationship, and for the artists to know not to be taken advantage of when the contracts are being set up, and to know their percentages and like all these things, which can be a bit of a ball. I mean, even for me starting out was like, wow, like all these things are it's like looking into like legality and all this stuff. And the one other thing I know, and this is the last thing I'm going to say, is I know that managers in the beginning, they work a lot of their life part-time, and until they really make money out of an artist, it can take years. And a lot of the times the managers are also friends with the people that they're managing. So it's really kind of a very close relationship of a friendship, almost like a critical friendship sometimes. But I know that they get 20% in the beginning, and that's kind of like the minimum. But then as the artist gets bigger, because they make more money, they start getting a smaller, well, technically they should be getting a smaller percentage of 15%, I think, because there is more money in that whole thing. But I do think that a good manager can also be helpful, also if they have the right relationships in the industry, like knowing a booking agent or a promoter or a lawyer, and so on and so forth. So I just wanted to put my perspective in that, because I felt closely to this subject. So, but yeah, just my opinion on this.
Yeah, so totally. Go on, Marla.
Just before I forget, in terms of the legality thing, I would recommend becoming a member of the Musicians Union, because within that, it's like either £200 for the year or £20 a month, and you get free legal advice. So it's really good if you want someone to look over contracts. And there's some other stuff I want to say, but you can go, Gareth. I need to remember.
No, I was just going to, I agreed with everything you said there. I think what I found particularly interesting was hearing like how you provide that support for your partner in terms of the knowledge that perhaps you have that he doesn't, and also how you said how a lot of managers will start as friends. And I think those are both really organic ways, and they are instantly based in sort of a mutual trust and respect, and the relationships that develop like that, I think are really positive. But I think broadly there are so many elements of the music industry that have existed exactly the same for 50 years that were invented when there was so much more money in the industry, and it was unrecognizable to what we see today. But I think that so much of the infrastructure and the practices that are implemented within the industry carry on exactly as they have done for 50 years. And I think that's why we need to start looking at different ways of operating and different ways of money being sort of distributed around the industry, because to this day it's still the case that the most wealthy people within music, like generally speaking, are not the artists. It's not the people creating art, it's people extracting value from that art, be they people at major labels or big shop managers. And I think that's something that needs to be changed. And I think that one of the first things on the journey to doing that is rethinking what a relationship with a manager is and what purpose a manager serves, and could it be done differently. But I think the main, what I absolutely agree with, was these organic, these working relationships developing from personal friendships. I think it is the perfect way that a traditional scenario could reveal itself.
I want to speak, but there's a beeping going on. I don't know if you can hear me okay?
You're literally fine, and we can't hear any background noise.
Okay, perfect. So another thing I would recommend for any women and gender non-conforming people, there's a monthly meetup called Ladies Music Pub, which is literally ladies meeting up at the pub and talking about music. So it's different people who work in music, whether they be artists or lawyers or managers as well. But that was a really interesting conversation from a manager who was basically like, it's tough for us only getting 20% kind of thing, and like kind of flipped it in a way of like, we're doing all this unpaid labor. And so for me, it's a really, I know of so many artists who are scared of getting a manager because they hear horror stories of them like taking too much money off the top and kind of screwing them over and things. But for me, I'd say before entering a relationship like that, it's so important that you know exactly what you want to get out of it, so you can really do a litmus test have a trial period of like a few months, so you know that they have the capacity to actually like fulfill the targets that you really want. And so, for example, like my manager has done a lot of stuff like finding a label and like negotiating the deal with them, and then like finding a lawyer, finding a new agent, things like that, which is like a lot of conversations with a lot of different people, which is a lot of time invested in me as an artist that doesn't go, that is unpaid basically. And so when I'm doing a support tour, like the Femi one, I lost a lot of money. So that's a lot of time for him that he's putting into doing the advancing, and then like coming to Glasgow and back, and like paying for his way there, and like his hotels that he's essentially doing for free. But then at a point further down the line, he'll be getting 20%. But I've stipulated like in writing as well that he only takes 20% of certain things. So like my little Sims work and all my session work, that's untouched. So it's important as an artist that you feel the freedom to like be like, I feel comfortable like you kind of like being the manager for this section of my career, but not that section. And there was something else I was going to say, but I'll remember it later.
I feel like maybe we need to talk about the importance of contracts. Like, Gareth, do you have any contracts? It sounds like Marla definitely does. How does that work as an artist?
We don't have many contracts now because we own the rights to basically all of our records, which is fantastic. But for a long time we did. And I suppose we've got some horror stories around it, which no doubt influences my general perspective on this. But we signed big record deals our band basically came to be at the very end of the sort of like indie music boom, when basically before the recession hit in 2008. And so our first deals we signed a record deal for £150,000. We signed a publishing deal for £180,000. And that money was really significant in getting us on the road and allowing us to for the first few years be a full-time band. And we went straight from university to go to record an album in in Canada and on tour non-stop for like 3 years. But within those contracts, there's obviously so much intricacy and so much stuff that at the time we were just sort of dazzled by the number of zeros on after the pound sign, and they stuck with us for like 15 years or what have you. And even when those contracts had expired, we're still in a situation where record labels or publishing companies, and I would say publishing companies are the worst, are still doing everything they can not to relinquish the rights to the back catalogue. We've got a situation where one of our publishing deals finished a couple of years ago, and we've moved it to a new publishing company, which is only administering for us. So their percentage is far less because we own the publishing rights outright now. But the actual process of getting one to relinquish and the other to start administering is so difficult. I think also because every sort of like agency and every rights agency and every major company within music at the moment is drastically understaffed, is underpaying staff. And so we're speaking with some of the biggest companies in the world, like Universal, Cobalt, Collective, and every single email we get from people is them saying, sorry, I haven't got to this yet. I've been so busy. I've not had a chance, but I'm trying to speak to somebody about it. So yeah, straight from the point there, I suppose, but like the potential for signing a contract is the first bit, and then it's everything that comes with it. And that's why it's so important to, I think Marla made a really good point about the free legal advice that the Musicians Union can provide. But as soon as you are signing significant record deals or publishing agreements, then that's when a lawyer will come into play. And you know, the fees that lawyers charge are obscene. So, yeah, it's... I think the way that the industry has changed, I think there are so many less acts signing contracts because record labels aren't throwing money around like they used to. And I think that needs to be viewed as a positive in the ways that it becomes easier to navigate your rights and ownership of your music.
Ria, did you want to come in on that?
Just following that point, first, thank you so much, guys. This has been such a great session. But I found that when I've got contracts, ChatGPT is so helpful now. To first run through before you go to a lawyer, before you know, because obviously the Musicians Union, they definitely provide help. They're an incredible service, but they're limited because if you've got a contract, you can't get a contract checked with them if you're creating the contract. It has to be a company has given you a contract, their name is on it, your name is on it, so they do have stipulations, and I believe you only get 1 hour of service with them. So it just depends like what your requirements are, but I found that you do need a lawyer at some point, and when you do, definitely ChatGPT is like magic nowadays to simplify, to make you understand what you're signing, what's in the terms, and then you can go to a lawyer and say, I have XYZ problems, could you please address them?
I think that's a really good point in that going in informed and having a sort of a skeleton understanding of what you're going to discuss will be very useful, because it's the difference between being charged for 3 hours of a lawyer's time versus 1 hour of a lawyer's time. And a lawyer will take great delight at explaining everything to you in detail, knowing that they're getting paid to do that. So yeah, being informed going into it would certainly be worth your time.
Thank you. Beth, have you got a point on that one?
Yeah, it's actually a point. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Yeah, I'm Beth Coombs from Jamming Station in Devon. I'll do the description. I've got fair skin, long dark hair, and yeah, I've got a blurry background. I'm just sitting in my living room. I've really enjoyed this so far, and it's a slightly different slant I have from my own perspective and professional perspective. So I don't know how much it adds to what people are saying, but it's more of a question as well. In response to you, Gareth, in terms of, fewer and fewer people are signing up to deals, and they're trying to work it out as independent artists. So my perspective is, so I'm good friends with Ren's dad, Ren Gill, who's a self-made artist and came out of his own management contract and did it all himself and is just thriving, as probably a lot of people here know, which is really, really inspiring. And I've been watching that journey and seeing how he's doing it. That's informed me. But then also running a youth music project down in Devon and being quite town-based, but really meeting a lot of young people who are rurally isolated. I think what's happening at the moment as we work with a huge number of sort of young emerging artists who are like, we're in the middle of the countryside, and something that they're really wanting is lots of different gigs to generate smaller audiences of their own. So it's like there's this kind of inspiration for self-made artists that I think they're riding on a little bit. And I guess the question is how do small venues like us, who we have a capacity of, say, 60 in our performance space, 150 in the whole building, but it's over 3 floors, how do we network with lots of other smaller venues to support those emerging artists, to build those growing kind of networked audiences of people who really want to see local artists on tour or emerging artists on tour. I think the power is going to come from the people who trust in the artists and who want to follow them independently. So there's an independence for the audience as there is a growing independence for the artist too. And so it's almost a question that doesn't necessarily need an answer, but it's an interesting one, is how do we all move forward? Not necessarily without a manager, because I'm sure as an artist, it's really important to have someone managing everything or helping with a lot of those aspects of management. So not to negate that bit, but in terms of audience development and how people are reached and how the gigs are got, and that relationship between audience and artists. So yeah, it's more of a question really in the current climate. Thank you. I'll leave it there open.
Does anything come to mind for you, Marla, or shall I?
You can go ahead.
I think I feel very strongly about what you said about sort of like that rural isolation and the fact that Devon and Cornwall basically don't exist as far as the UK music industry is concerned. I know I spend a lot of time in Torbay. It's my favourite place in the world. So I am familiar that there are some great things happening in like Torquay, for example, with Burn It Down Festival, and they're getting more gigs. And I know a place in like Falmouth, like Cornish Bank, which does a lot of great stuff as well. But I think it's incredibly sad because it's one of the best places in the UK. But I also understand why touring artists don't make their way down there, because it feels so, the touring circuit basically stops at Bristol. But that has a knock-on impact of how people within these isolated communities believe that they can be an artist, because gigs don't necessarily happen on a big scale there. And it's great that if there is a network of venues trying to make that happen more, then that's doubtless a positive. You said how like venues are working together in order to try to create this network. Does that extend to sort of trying to make a tour happen of that region, putting together a bill of 3-4 bands, an eclectic lineup, and I appreciate that's an expensive thing to do, but already having a tour routed for these acts by virtue of like-minded promoters and venues working together feels like a really great start. And I assume that's something that's happening then, is it?
It's definitely something we're exploring as a youth music project with the other funded partners as well, through Youth Music and the Devon Hub. And then also with more professional artists who do gig around here. And also, obviously, a lot of our young people travel to London and Bristol. So it's all connected. From what we can see, it's all connected. But it's also like, it's just an interesting question, how, as a musician, you actually support yourself financially, and how that whole network is potentially could change shape and become a bit more connected, in order to support those artists, especially the younger emerging artists.
Yeah, I think it's a really important question. It's not one that I have answers to. I like the fact that I still live in a place called Midsummer Norton, which is where I grew up, and our nearest city is Bath, which is like 30 minutes away. And it upsets me that so many artists need to move from where they live to London or to Manchester or wherever in order to properly begin their music career. And so I really hope for a future in the industry where that isn't necessary, where venues and creatives in regions of the UK, be that the Southwest, be that the Northeast or Norfolk or wherever, are getting more, especially in regions in Wales and Scotland as well, are getting the support they need to be able to embark upon their career where they're from, rather than uprooting and moving somewhere expensive. But unfortunately, I don't feel like I have any answers. I just hope for the same things as you, I suppose.
Marla, have you got any comments on that?
I don't. I think Gareth made a really succinct and detailed point there.
Legends. We've got some hands up, so I'm going to just say we're probably in the question and answer part anyway, and we've been doing that the whole time, which is lovely. Really great engagement. I think, Mina, you had your hand up first.
Hi, my name's Mina Essia. I'm a singer-songwriter, and I actually grew up in Devon. So my experience with performing and gigging and stuff was just quite community based, because it's, you hear about events and you just go to the open mics in town, and I would perform with the jazz band and stuff like that. And I moved to London, and I moved thinking that it would suddenly be so much easier to be regularly performing and collaborating. And even though youth music is really great for having a network of artists, and that's been amazing, but I've just been damn, it's actually quite intimidating and quite hard to burst the London musician artist bubble. It can feel quite exclusive, and it's quite hard. I just think when you come from a different way of in Devon, there's really not this exclusive artist understanding all of these things about touring and managers, and I literally have no knowledge of it. So this has been so interesting and educational. But trying to gig in London, I've been kind of reaching out to venues and getting a response, but then the event's cancelled. And I just wondered if there's any advice about when you're transitioning from a city which has a very different approach to music to London, which feels like a whole other kettle of fish.
So for me, I feel because my experience is kind of growing up in London, doing music as an extracurricular, then going to Bristol to study chemistry, and then going to jams and stuff, and playing with different musicians there. And so for me, and then coming back to London, but for me, I feel in an ideal world, I don't know if it's really hypothetical or really ridiculous thing to say, but I feel in an ideal world, it's kind of a thing of you kind of stay in situ, and you kind of create all the buzz where you are, rather than moving to a really it's a really big and really expensive city essentially to go to, in the hopes of the buzz being created. But I feel like if you're kind of like playing in the venues around Devon and in the local area and kind of like, yeah, drumming up hype there, then you have some momentum to bring over to the big city, rather than kind of moving to the big city in the hopes that that momentum is creative, if that makes sense.
Thank you. I wondered if anyone's got like recommendations of really specific grassroots venues that are good for small artists.
Whereabouts in London are you based?
So I'm near Old Street.
And what kind of capacities are you thinking?
I'm starting out. I mean, I've collaborated with jazz bands and performed at weddings and balls and stuff, but I haven't really done so I'm not sure.
I'd say Servant Jazz Quarters in Dalston. So that's 80 capacity, and it has like a built-in audience who go because they love the Servant Jazz Quarters. It's a really cute venue, really nice space. The sound is great. Servant Jazz Quarters, yeah.
Thank you.
I have a think for some more as well in London.
I'm in obviously more of an indie band, but the Ivy House in Nunhead is like this community pub, community-owned pub that I love playing there. And it's obviously the case that so many grassroots venues are under threat and shutting. But the Cavendish Arms, there's quite a lot of comedy there, but I've played there and it's been quite welcoming. That's Stockwell. And if anyone else has got any recommendations, put them in the chat and I can send some round as well. There's some coming in, which is really nice.
Yeah, there's the 100 Club in Soho is good, and that's a really easy one for everyone in London because it's in central to get to. That's about 100 capacity. Again, the sound is really good, really nice vibe in there.
Ria, did you have a question next? I'll keep coming round to everyone. This is really nice, by the way.
I was actually going to ask you guys if you've ever had any experience with the kind of, Live Nations, SJMs of booking agencies, and if, what your experience has been, if you have had any with certain booking agents, and also what stage of your career you aimed to do. Was it when you were selling out your own shows, or did you go towards did you gravitate towards them in order to aid you to move up from the capacity of shows you were playing? Because I recently did a supporting slot at Academy 3 in Manchester, and it was a fantastic show, and from there the promoting agency that was doing that show is keen to work with me, but I was just curious, in your experience, what the right time is.
I would say when it's the right time, it will happen. It's not something, with regards to who the promoters are, be it Live Nation or whoever else, is that will come with scale. And I think it will not happen deliberately. It will depend on where you're playing. It will depend on the number of independent promoters in the cities. Live Nation and the like do have a sort of a stranglehold on a lot of venues, especially O2 venues and stuff like that. So if you're playing O2s, it's probably going to be a Live Nation show. But for every O2 in a city, that same city has a venue of an equivalent size, which is probably a lot nicer and independent, and will be promoted by somebody local. So I think rather than thinking about it in terms of how do I start playing shows with Live Nation, just think of it in terms of capacity of shows, and then it will happen. And it might even happen at a lower capacity if it's an Academy 3 room or a smaller Academy room. But think of it in terms of size of room rather than who is promoting the show, because it doesn't really impact the quality of the show or the attendance particularly.
Sorry, just to clarify. So I was more asking on the angle of if you have a choice between like a local promoter in Manchester or like the SJMs or the Live Nations of the world, is there one that you gravitate towards depending on where you're at in like what size of capacity you're working at in terms of like people who come and what they bring to that set?
Our band has a policy of not doing shows with Live Nation because we think that they are a net bad on the music industry. However, that should not be of your concern at this point. So just do whatever is offering you the best show. You know, like somewhere like Manchester, you've got an independent promoter like Now Wave, who is promoting venues like New Century Hall, and then across the road you've got is it the Ritz that's the O2 venue there that's being promoted by Live Nation. They are the exact same capacity pretty much. You'll be getting charged a merch fee at Live Nation where you won't be getting charged a merch fee at New Century Hall. The show experience will probably be exactly the same, except for the ticket fees on the ticket purchased by punters will probably be more at a Live Nation show. But for you as an artist, I think in terms of doing good support slots, it's probably going to be more Live Nation because most touring bands will just do a Live Nation tour or whatever. But I don't think it's going to be have a good or a bad impact on your show or your growth by virtue of doing one or the other. That's a human experience, though.
I'd say as well in Manchester, there's Band on the Wall, and they're a really great promoter. They do, they're more grassroots, more independent, and I'd say with Live Nation, it's that they're a bit more exploitative with that merch selling fee. I remember that being an issue because when I toured with Loyal Carter, we did a Live Nation tour, O2 Academy tour, and it was just. Yeah, like selling merch is one of the ways as an artist you can actually make money, and they're taking like 12% off of that. It's like, what can you do?
Sometimes at festivals, obviously, there's an official merch thing where they take a cut. We've just sold our merch over the barrier and just said, we'll be down there after. It depends on the scale you're at. If you're fairly small scale, they will let you get away with that.
I love that. That's great. Thank you so much, guys.
You've got to be a bit of a rebel sometimes. Florence, I think you were next. I'm going to go to you.
Hi, thank you so much. So I'm Florence. I'm a bit into a niche thing. So I'm a jazz harpist. I have my own band called Let's Go Trio. We play jazz funk, and we started last year, and now we have a big achievement. We have been invited to the World Harp Congress in Toronto. The problem is that they don't pay any travel and accommodation. So I have to pay everything on my own, basically. And I've been looking for funds, and I've been starting a crowdfunding and stuff, but that's still a lot of money to put on the table. It's £4,600 I need to have because I'm bringing my whole band there. And the Congress is about 1 week long. And the problem is with funding, so I've tried with the Youth Next Gen Fund. It didn't work out. I will try the PRS. The thing is also it's a bit tricky because we are only doing one date and not the whole tour. So we cannot really qualify for a touring fund. Also because it's abroad, it's then not a project in the UK. So I'm a bit stuck on this side, and I was just wanted to ask you for some advice. Also, if we would be gigging, also just in the UK, but we don't have so many concerts for the moment. But what in Canada? Maybe that could be an interesting opportunity, but I have no contacts there. I don't know really where to start. I did a bit of research of jazz clubs and stuff, but this is just in the case we would be gigging there. I would need to organize a harp and everything, a bass, a guitar, John 7, everything. So, but just for the money, I would love to have some advice, and how could I maybe connect in Canada? I've been also reaching out to the French community because I'm French and I'm Swiss. I didn't hear zero answer for the moment. So I tried French Institute because there's one in London as well. I went in person to ask them as well if they could connect me. No answer. Swiss Club Toronto as well, and I'm asking my bandmates who are Spanish, Italian, and Venezuelan if they could also connect with some people there in Toronto. But yeah, any advice, please let me know.
Question. It sounds like you're working out, is it worth the money to do this opportunity? Like, it's when an opportunity is worth doing, or whether it's better to like build yourself in the UK or where you're based. But if anyone else wants to sort of like have any advice, or when you get given an opportunity that looks amazing and it's travel, but it's very expensive from the sounds of it.
I'd say for something like that, because I have friends who are in similar situations for South by Southwest in Austin, Texas, where it's the opportunity to play like one show in a new territory, but the money is crazy. Like, some friends like spending their whole savings for this. But I would say in a situation like that, like normally an artist would ideally like have a like plan a tour essentially around the conference to make it worth it. But in a situation like that, I would say if the PRS International Touring Fund doesn't cover it, UCAT have done a new touring fund as well, but as you said, because it's one show, it might not be eligible. Maybe Arts Council as well, if those ones don't cover it. I would say don't spend thousands of pounds for this opportunity, because although it is a harp conference, so it would be like a lot of networking, it would be beneficial, but potentially have you considered doing it as a solo artist and kind of like maybe playing harp to a backing track? And then when you're there, I've heard that hiring instruments that are kind of like used, because American University have like loads of like marching bands and different things like that, it's quite cheap to like hire student instruments while you're there, just as a way to keep the cost down. Like for myself, when there's not a lot of budget, I'll do a solo tour. It'll be like bass guitar with backing track, just because, yeah, I don't want you to spend loads of money. I feel like I was so protective. I'm like, please don't do it. But obviously it sounds like an amazing opportunity, but it's so much money. And I'd say spend that type of money when there's a tour around it, because then it's more of an investment and you're playing to more crowds in more cities, if that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. Also, Arts Council, I know it's a lot of work and I'm having like 3 jobs on the side as well. But also I'm a bit afraid that PRS, somehow I'm confused with the deadlines. I saw 29th of May, so I would still have time. But apparently then the only one left is until 31st of December this year, which is... It's too late. We have to apply 8 weeks before the project starts, and we are invited July 29th to perform. So it's either this one or I'll try Arts Council, but yeah, let's see with the time management. Yeah,
I've also sent the Instagram of this woman. She herself is she helps people with their funding application. So you pay her £80 and she'll look over it. She's got funding from like Arts Council and PRS like so many times. Like, she really knows the language of these funds. But she also posts like different opportunities each month or each week that are really good. Yeah, it's interesting. You went to, I thought France and like generally European countries are like really good for like getting funding and stuff. So that's really frustrating that you've already tried that avenue.
Because I'm in the UK, so it doesn't make any difference. I have to be in France going to Canada.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's confusing because I'm abroad already, kind of, and I'm going even more abroad.
Yeah. Okay.
It's definitely the case for always weighing things up, isn't it? Thanks for your question, Florence. Saloni, did you want to ask anything?
Hiya. I'm Saloni. Sorry, I've not got my camera on. I'm not presentable right now. But thank you for the session. It's been really informative. My music is a bit more niche. So I do South Asian languages on pop, R&B, hip hop sort of beats. So it's like a fusion of the two. And I've been performing for many years, like performed at Big Weekend, Wembley, like opened at Wembley Arena, and did a few other like more private shows. But I still feel it's tough to find gigs. I've just started doing like my own headline ones. Before it's been more openings. So I just started a headline one last year of like a smaller capacity of like 150. So I guess my question is, how would I go find like the right promoters, or know what the right capacity is, or build an audience to go for higher capacity and do them more regularly? Because one thing I've been worried about is it financially sustainable? Like the event that I did like as a headline show, just about broke even, if not. And like I want to try and build on the headline shows to kind of be more reliant on myself rather than always trying to find gigs. But yeah, I'd love any advice on that. And also, like, I think with the niche that I'm in, I found it tougher to find promoters that would book me as a more emerging artist rather than an artist that's already there, because like there are bigger promoters that bring in artists like internationally, but then they don't always have opening acts. So yeah, sorry if that was a bit of an overload, but a few questions there.
I think sort of work backwards with it. Don't worry about, not just for you, but I think for everybody in this call, don't worry about capacities. That is up for the promoter to worry about, because a promoter is not going to book you into a 500 cap room if they're not confident that they can make money from it. So I think you can sort of to an extent disregard that concern, and the key clearly I think is going to be finding promoters that understand the music that you're making and understand the audience for that. So I think it's a matter of identifying the sort of gigs that you would want to be playing on and reaching out to the promoters that are putting those on. And I think again, it comes down to community. I would hope, you mentioned that a lot of these promoters are putting on bigger acts in bigger capacity rooms, but I would hope that within a more niche genre, that there would be that sense of sort of community and solidarity within it, where people would be looking to help grow, you know, the headliners that they're going to be putting on in years to come. So I think it really is a case of like shooting your shot with those promoters, even if they seem much too big at this point. I would hope they would see, they would share that interest in your music and do what they can to support it.
Yeah, I think the only thing is a lot of I have actually asked and emailed, and I'm in touch like personally with these promoters, but they're just like, the acts come from India and they're just not open to having an opening act. I've had the chance once, which was Wembley Arena, but that was like 3 years ago now. So it's like, I haven't had anything come since. And with the headline show as well, like capacity wise, so I self-funded it because I couldn't find a promoter that would organize it and do like just because it's such a niche, and I've not seen many. There are like a couple, so I'm working with one this year, but like that's one of like very few. So yeah, it's a bit of a struggle there, I guess.
Yeah, it's certainly, you know, I'm in an indie rock band. Anyone will book an indie rock band, and I really feel for you in that your opportunities are going to be limited as a result. That's a huge shame. But I think that it sounds like the not being open to having opening acts within this genre feels unusual to me, and does feel like it's self-defeating, because it's not allowing the genre to grow in these communities, because you're not allowing the next generation of artists to have these opportunities. It's a real shame.
Yeah, it's just there are a few, but it's not too many. I guess to add to that, one of my questions was, how would you focus on building the fan base that do then come and get tickets to come watch you perform? I know you said not to worry about capacity, but I know as well, like it's on the artist to build their fan base to then convert those fans to then buy tickets to shows where you're headlining or opening for.
Certainly. If you're putting on your own shows, then my comments about not worrying about capacity are, you're the promoter as well. So yeah, it's really hard to make meaningful connection these days because of the way that social media has just been destroyed by money and algorithm in the past, like 10 years or whatever. It's certainly a lot more difficult now than it was before. But I think that music fans do value genuine connection more than ever, because they're so used to just seeing the same slop over and over. If you can connect with people on a human level, that makes a real difference. We're seeing a resurgence of newsletters, which I think is really a real positive, because it allows you to communicate with your fan base without a restriction on word count or the algorithm stopping your stuff from being seen. So I think that trying to connect with people in a space outside of TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, whatever else, is really important, and gathering and doing that through a newsletter, that's something that we've done in recent years, and it has felt really worthwhile, and really grown those connections with already existing fans as well as new fans.
All right, thank you.
There's loads of people connecting in the chat with some gigs and stuff as well. So just make sure you've seen that before, like the call closes as well. I'll officially say we're done. Thank you so much, Gareth and Marla, for coming along. But we can just keep going for a little bit, because it feels like there's a flow, right? But if anyone needs to get off, we've sort of run to time, which is great. But yeah, Saloni, go ahead.
Thanks,
everyone.
Another question was, how do you ensure to make, I guess, a full-time income out of live touring from music? Is like, how long do you tend to wait for that, or what are the things that you look at to make it make sense full-time?
I think, Marla, you'd have a lot more to contribute on this than me, because of the scenario in which I came up, which was basically just a record label paid a load of money, which is unrealistic for the current music climate.
So for me, it's my full-time job, because I live at home in London, but I have the privilege of having a family that lives near Finsbury Park tube station. So it's just like really, it's just really helpful getting to different gigs. But because I do the session work, like the touring and live stuff, but then I also do some recording stuff, which is more, rather than an upfront fee, that's kind of like living off of the royalties that those recordings kind of, that the royalties get me. And DJing as well. So it's basically like just doing loads of different things within music itself. So DJing, playing my live shows as a solo artist, which is kind of like mainly makes a loss, which is why I do the other stuff to like keep that afloat. I do some teaching as well. I teach bass lessons. And so, yeah, it's why every day is so different, because I do so many different things within music in order to do music as my full-time job. So yeah, I'd say it's about being flexible, kind of like keeping an open mind and seeing if there are other things within music that you're interested in doing. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Jeremy, did you want to ask a question? I'm happy for people to do so. Obviously, Gareth and Marla, if you've got to get off as well, that's fine.
I'm good.
So yeah, I've got a coach to Bristol, but so if anyone has any questions for me, feel free to message me on Instagram, because I feel like there's so much more that could be said and could be asked. But yeah, thanks so much, you guys, for having me. Lovely to meet you all, and have a good day.
Thanks, Marla. I'll circulate your email as well, if that's okay. Cool.
Yeah, that's good. Sweet. Bye.
Thank you so much.
I did have a quick question. So I kept lowering and raising my hand because I had a question and it was answered, and I had another question. But what I wanted to ask was that, so like I'm a solo artist, and I do kind of like, it's more like acoustic based, but it's pop music. But I'm not at the point where it's feasible to hire musicians to play like unrehearsed in a band. Is it like this? This could be like a thing where it depends on like my artistic vision. But like, is it worth looking into like backing tracks, or like working that into a live set, or like is it fine to just like keep playing solo with a guitar?
I think that those are all very decent options. I think in terms of establishing a band, I think there's the question of if you want to remain a solo act. One of my personal great disappointments of the past, like post-COVID basically, is that there are so many more solo acts than bands these days, which I think is a real loss to like the music community, and just my whole experience of making music has been doing it with mates, which has been the greatest privilege of it. But there will be other people in your position who are solo acts who want to have a band playing with them, who can't afford to hire people as session musicians. And so I think that finding those like-minded people and sort of doing a trade of sort of like, you will play in their band if they will play in your band, and backing each other up at gigs, then I think that would be a really positive approach. But also playing to a backing track as well is a really decent option. I assume if you're sort of recording your own music, then you very likely have the ability to play additional instruments, just not enough hands to do it. So I think establishing a really cool backing track and playing along to that, people are very open to that sort of like broad genre of, if you call it broadly, like bedroom pop or whatever, is hugely popular and successful. And I think it's a really legitimate approach to making music. So however you find your way in that, I think there's no wrong way to do it. Whatever sounds good and however you enjoy playing it, they're all good options. The access that people have to recording setups now means you can create really, really great backing tracks, and some of the most engaging music that I'm hearing at the moment is music where it doesn't necessarily sound like instruments. You're not, you can't put your finger on what instrument you're hearing, and so if you're able to develop a live set in that way, then that would be great.
Mina, hey, how's it going?
Hi. Kind of following from what Jeremy just said, how do you actually seek a band in this time? Like, what's the recommended platform? I often, with a pianist that I've been like doing performances with for a long time, and he's great, but he's extremely busy, and I kind of want to be performing more than he's available for. So then I'm kind of like, where do I look? I'm not sure. I mean, I know there are websites where it's like find band members, but I don't really find many that are like alternative indie jazz. It often seems to be rock or indie rock bands.
Yeah, and you don't want to be just working with somebody because they play the instrument that you need. You want to be working with somebody because you connect with them and you share the same like musical inspirations and personality, etc. What instrument do you play, Mina?
So I just sing.
Right.
But yeah, so I'm like a solo artist, but I really like playing with musicians, because then there's that chemistry on stage which adds so much to the performance. So I do prefer that compared to instrumentals, but it can be quite hard to like actually get people performing with me. And obviously you want to pay them, but yeah, I kind of want to find musicians to be working with. I'm not sure how to go about it.
Obviously you referenced like ads online and seeking people online, so that is an option. I think going back to all the great info that we had before about different venues that you could potentially be playing at, hanging out in those places, meeting those people, it's tough because like so much of it relies on people being able to be extroverted and to just put themselves in uncomfortable positions and meet people that way, which I wouldn't particularly want to do myself, but it is a legit way to do it. I think being in the right places, putting yourselves in those places and knowing that there will be people there who are the other side of the coin to you. There will be people who are pianists or any other instrument who are just desperate to find somebody that can sing beautifully on top of the music they're playing. And I think retain that hope and that knowledge that there are those people. It's just a matter of finding them. And I think putting yourself in the right places, not being afraid to be clear in what you're trying to who you're trying to meet and what you're trying to achieve as well. I think that's, unfortunately, because it's a very nerve-wracking thing to do. And also maybe like fan communities as well within the sort of genres that you're interested in. Like really, I think the temptation is to spread a really wide net because there's more people there. But, venturing into these places where there might only be, 10, 15 people, but the likelihood of any one of them being what you're looking for being vastly higher, I think that, be really specific and niche in what you're trying to find and have the confidence and the belief in yourself to do it.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's like an organisation called Sound Connections that is based at Rich Mix in Shoreditch, and they do quite a lot of like networking and early career musician sort of like hangouts, which is kind of the ideal scenario, right? When you can go somewhere, even like doing some sort of like course, if you're just doing any kind of like vocal course, or you will meet people, even if you're like, I guess we always want to develop ourselves. So, I met some people recently. It was like an early years music making course, but it was so nice to connect with people. And turns out quite a lot of them were in bands as well, because, people have like lots of different interests. I don't know, it'll be like quite related. You'll definitely meet people, but I think Gareth's just right. It's like putting yourself in the right places, right? Because I was thinking about how I came to be in a band, because I kind of went to uni being like, I just want to be in a band. And I was a bit like Marla. I did a science degree. We're like biology and chemistry. And you just sort of fall into these things because like at uni's had societies, so you could kind of like find people and like gig buddies and stuff. But I don't know what that's like now, because that was like a long time ago. But I think, just hanging out at venues where it feels welcoming, right? And finding your community. But again, easier said than done, like Gareth says. But I think putting yourself out there, especially while you're in London, if you're in London for any set time, it's kind of like there's lots of opportunity here. But it's wherever you are, there will be places to hang out and find people as well.
That just makes me think how much we need the culture of like societies outside of higher education, in that like the ages, I'm 40 now, and I'd like, if there was a whatever society operating in my nearest city, wouldn't it be just so great to be able to go somewhere and meet like-minded people? With it being facilitated for you like that. It's a real shame that doesn't exist outside of higher education.
I mean, I've met people at the community allotment that play instruments, so it's kind of like leaning into all your other interests perhaps, and then just getting stuck in. But it's hard when you've got this one aim and it doesn't seem to be happening naturally, right? But I think it's just surrounding yourself with good people and like artists, something which should happen. But all the best, and I guess connecting to the next gen community as well. And there's a Discord group, so if you don't have access to that, if you're next gen funded,
I haven't joined it, but do you know how you join it?
If you're a next gen funded person, I can like email you the link if you just like get in touch with your grant
Discord
manager.
Is confusing.
You've got a Discord.